So, hello, welcome to another episode of Rustacean Station. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. Today we have Gabor. I hope I said that correctly.
Yeah, quite close. Gabor, I
Pretty
usually say.
Gabor.
Yeah.
He's the creator of Rust Digger. Welcome, Gabor. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm quite fine and happy to be here.
So, Rust Digger, I mean, the name itself doesn't really explain what it is. Maybe you can give a quick synopsis of what it is.
This is the fourth of these digger sites that I created. And the idea is to dig out or dig in or whatever in English, interesting things about, in the case of Rust, of crates. But I created a similar site for Perl, one for Python, and one for Ruby as well, for the respective third-party libraries. So sort of trying to dig out interesting things from there. That was the idea of the name. I'm not really sure how it sounds in English, so whatever.
Well, now that you use the word dig, right, it starts to make a little bit more sense why it's called Rust Digger.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, I've never heard this name before. So then your other sites that you've created, like for Perl and Python, they're also called Python Digger and etc., right?
So not exactly. There is for Perl it's called CPAN Digger. The Ruby's I think is Ruby Digger. For Python it's PyDigger. They all are slightly different and at slightly different stages of development and usage. The whole idea is basically to try to find so a couple of things. One of them is to try to analyze the common practices. So we know this title of best practices in software development or packaging or whatever. And I noticed that there are many times several best practices that are even contradicting. But my idea was is try to find the common practices. Let's say if we're talking about Rust, of the crates, of how crates are being created, what is being used, and looking at Rust and crates, it's very standardized. It's way more standardized than the other three languages. So in a way, there's a lot less to analyze in that side because we don't have. I mean, Rust. There are not that I know at least, several packaging systems and several ways of testing. There are not that many different approaches, either because the standard is so well thought out, or because there just haven't been enough time to create all kind of different approaches. But that's sort of the basic idea. But that was sort of the basic idea, to try to analyze these packages, and then to start to recommend to the package managers or crate maintainers various things. The simplest that I suggest actually is that each crate has an optional field, right, that tells you where is the repository of that crate, where is the version control, and it's not a required field, but it's a good to have field. If you are an open source project and you distribute your crate and someone receives it somehow, let's say, they might want to be able to find the source code of that. So the version control system, on GitHub or GitLab or wherever you put it, doesn't really matter. So that's sort of the first thing that I'm checking at crates. I'm monitoring what is uploaded to crates IO and then checking this field. And it turns out that about 80% of the crates have this field, if you are looking from the positive side. And if you're looking at the negative side, then 20% are missing it. Meaning that for those 20% of crates, if you try to send a patch or a pull request in these days, then first you have to find out where the source code lives. That's what was one of the first ideas. And then so what I do actually with this Rust Digger these days is that the data is being collected basically once a day, because I'm using this. The crates they have an API, but there was a recommendation on the download page or whatever, instead of using that API, to use the database dump. So I'm using for now that one, and this means that I have a delay of 1 day. It doesn't really matter. It's not that important to be up to date. And later on, maybe I'll start using the API to be more up to date. But So I'm using this dump and then of all the crates, the metadata of all the crates. And then from that point on, start looking first of all the metadata, and then for the crates that have the link to the repository, then I clone the repository and start to go through the repository. And another thing that I'm checking is for continuous integration, right? So that's another thing that these days that we have these cloud-based continuous integration systems, it's quite easy to set up something. Let's say on GitHub, the GitHub Actions, or GitLab. On GitLab, there are the pipelines. And from with the older projects, with the Perl project and the Python project, I was checking Travis. With Rust, actually, I haven't even tried it. I guess there are some Rust crates that are using Travis or were using Travis like a couple of years ago. Like for example, when I look at the same information on the Perl side, so the cpan, which is the same thing as crates IDO, more or less, then you will find quite a few of these libraries that have Travis CI configured, which doesn't work actually anymore. Or as far as I know, it doesn't work for open source projects anymore. So it sort of gives maybe a false security that, oh, I have a CI, but it doesn't actually run anymore. I haven't checked that with Rust. I don't know, probably partially because Rust is so much newer. But I guess there can be quite a few Rust crates that use the Travis. I mean, some of the documentation, I think, one of the books, maybe the CLI book, I think, it has an example how to configure Travis. It doesn't have an example how to configure GitHub Actions, which just means that no one updated it. But that also means to me that probably there were quite a few crates that were using Travis, and now they don't have the CI anymore.
I had no idea they shut that down. You totally blew my mind.
Happy that I surprised you with this, but I don't know how many of the listeners followed this. I mean, I was pretty surprised when I've heard it, but on one hand, on the other hand, it was sort of expected. I mean, once Microsoft and GitHub started to offer GitHub Actions for free, and then the sort of Travis didn't really have a chance or reason to continue to offer these free services, because people will use the closer, more default sort of system for everything, which is GitHub. So I don't know what's going on with Travis anymore, unfortunately. I used to, back when it was like up till 2 years ago, basically, or when was it? I used to send many pull requests to various projects configuring Travis for them. These days, I'm sending pull requests configuring GitHub Actions. So this is the idea of these digger websites, but specifically with the Rust digger. So monitoring the repository URL, and then there are these funny things. There are a few, not many, a few hundred crates where the repository URL starts with HTTP, not with HTTPS. So it's HTTP something and github.com and then something. And GitHub redirects to HTTPS. But it sort of bothers me that there is an HTTP link there. So I sent a few pull requests to crates just fixing this S. Which actually brings me to one of the other things that I use these websites. So I very much think that it's a very good way to practice, to do anything, to enter high tech, working on open source projects and sending pull requests. But getting involved into an open source project is not easy. I mean, I talked to a lot of people that said that, okay, they would like to get involved in open source. And then basically the first thing they said, oh, I would like to send a pull request to the Linux kernel, or I don't know, the Rust compiler or whatever. You're a beginner. That's not the first thing you should do, right? You should first get used to the social aspects, the technical aspect of pulling or of sending a pull request. Many of these people whom I talk to coming out from universities or some boot camp, and they don't really have experience neither in open source development and not even in the process of GitHub of sending a pull request. So one of the suggestions is, okay, go to one of these websites. Okay, let's go RustDigger. There is a list of all the crates that have HTTP instead of HTTPS in their repository link. So there is the repository link. Go to the repository and send a pull request fixing this S. And then you practice the sending of the pull request. And then you can go on, and there are a couple of more complex ones. Let's say finding out if there is no repository link, then finding out where the link is not that easy actually, right? Or it can be difficult. But sometimes, I mean, if the same person has more crates, then it's not that difficult. And actually in Rust with crates, that's actually even easier, because in order to upload to the crates IO, you need a GitHub account. So each user will have his or her GitHub account already linked from the RustDigger. So even if none of their crates has a repository link, you can still get to their GitHub account. Now, they might not have the repository of that project there, okay? So some of these people have their repository either hosted on GitLab. Some of the projects don't have a public repository. Maybe they don't even have a Git repository at all. I mean, I'm rather new to Rust, right? So I have been learning and writing Rust for like 3-4 months, I think now. So I'm not really involved in the community. I don't really understand yet. This is part of the goal of this project, of understanding a little bit better the community. So I don't really know how people behave or what, but I know from the other communities that there are people, let's say in the Perl community, that they're rather old school, and or maybe they have, I don't know, for whatever reason, okay, they don't even have a public version control, okay. Some of them say, let's say, that they don't want to get pull requests, or they rather get opened issues or just explanations of a bug, because in their point of view or their experience, let's say, the pull requests are not that high quality. Okay, and they rather write it themselves, the whole thing. I'm not really happy that they don't have a public version control system, because I think it's a huge value to the open source community, and for our ability to maintain that piece of software. So if someone for whatever reason stops maintaining a library that is used, you can pick up the most recent version that was released, assuming all the source code is in there. But there might be some helper files that you don't have in the released, let's say, the crate. Okay, maybe they are using some helper files in their version control system in order to generate that crate. If they don't have a public version control, then, well, it's much harder then, right, to continue the maintenance. If for whatever reason they stop maintaining. Maybe they won the lottery, okay, in the good case. But unfortunately, there are other cases when people, for other reasons, stop maintaining some projects, right? So that's one part of the reason, sort of, to try to get to all of the crates, or more crates, to have this link to the public repository. And then some parts that I haven't yet implemented with the RustDigger is going further, and that is something that I took from the Perl community, actually. So in the Perl community, for every library, okay, right, whatever we call crate, comes with the unit tests, comes with all the tests. So when you download it, all the tests are coming with it. And not only that, actually, when you install something, all the tests are executed on the user's computer. And then the interesting part is that you can configure your computer to send back this data to a central database, sort of like a CI system. In addition to this, there is a system that downloads every release, okay, every upload to, in the case of Perl, to cpan, runs the tests, and collects the test coverage data. On this website, which is, let's say, the same as crates.io, you can see the information of what is the test coverage of each of these libraries. So one of the things I'm trying to do, and that's one of the parts that are going to be in the RustDigger, is that it's going to try to run the tests of each one of the crates, most likely in a Docker container, to maintain some level of security, so it won't be able to access my other parts of my computer. But that way I'll try to connect the test coverage report. And then when you visit the Rust Digger, you will be able to see this information in addition to other information that you are interested. So another thing that I usually recommend to people who would like to contribute to open source but don't know really how is to write tests, because I think that in most cases writing a test is much easier than implementing something in the code base. Because in order to write a test, you basically need to know how to use the code, how to use the library, and you don't need to understand how it's being how it was implemented. Despite the fact that many software developers, right, think that, okay, I'm writing code, and then they think about testing as something difficult. Actually, I think that writing the test is the easier part. In at least in this case, I mean, getting involved in a project that you don't know, it's not that easy. So that's another thing that's part of the plan of this Rust Digger.
There's a lot that you've added and that you're planning to add. And going back to what you were talking about before, like having a whole section about which crates don't have a repository. I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm also kind of browsing around to take a look to see. You have this report section on top of the website. You go to no repository. And what I found was super interesting is the top crate I saw.
Which list are you looking at?
I'm looking at the no repository. Where did I see? I thought it was no repository. Maybe I'm wrong. The reason I saw that was because there is a crate on here called Fastly. Obviously, it's done by Fastly, right? Which is that CDN company. It's quite interesting. I found their GitHub. They don't have that repository there for that code, but they have a crate on here that doesn't have a repository. So I thought it was kind of weird that there'd be a crate without a repository from such a large company that I'll put the crate. But they also have other crates on there that do have a repository. That's also Fastly.
So that doesn't mean that they don't have a repository.
Yeah, it's not in the config.toml.
Yeah.
So I went to their GitHub. There's no repo there pointing to this one, but they had a Fastly API one that does have the repository as a key in the config.toml. So it's like they purposely don't have the code available to people, is what I'm guessing.
You say that they don't even have the repository.
Because you'd figure, okay, maybe they just didn't know about to put their repository link on there, right? It's one thing that could be, right? If it's your first crate, maybe you don't know about that. Or you don't know, you could have many crates, you may not know that you actually need to put that there, or that it's helpful to put that there, like you said, for the reasons that you stated above. Fastly itself actually has other crates already on crates.io that actually I went to the repo, and they do have the repo in the config.toml. So you'd figure that they would have that. They're a very large company. They have other crates that have the repo on it, but this one didn't. I thought that was kind of strange. So I'm kind of curious what would be their reasoning for why they wouldn't want to put that there. Maybe it's like distributed as like a compiled binary or something. So maybe there's something that they're worried about. I don't know.
So yeah, there are a couple of reasons, I think. One of them, which actually worries me, is that I actually haven't tried it, but I am quite sure that you can upload a crate without its source code to crates.io, and you can install it, right? You don't need the source code of the crate, or not all the source code. I think you could theoretically upload something to crates.io, put an open source license on it, but you upload it without the source code, just the compiled version, and don't without publishing the source code. Although you have the license open source on it, whatever open source license on it, and people will assume that it's an open source project, they don't actually have access to the source code. And I think this can be technically done. I haven't tried it. And of course, there can be some issues with this, that we might rely on some code that we think that it's open source, but in reality, you don't have access to the source code, which obviously can be really problematic at one point if something happens there, right? Either legally or economically or whatever. So that's one thing. But I think in most of the cases that the links are not there are because people forget it. Either they don't know. So since I started this website, I sent a lot of pull requests. And then from the responses, I understand that some people just didn't know how to add this, didn't know about the field that you can add, or just simply forgot to do this on this specific crate. And this can actually happen, I think, and I saw this happen when you have these subcrates or whatever we call it, right?
You have like a workspace with many crates inside, right? Something like that.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Basically, this is a multi-repo. Okay, so we in the Rust world, it's called the workspace, but it's basically a multi-repo where you have several projects that are somewhat related in the same repository, and you have to put in the repository link in each one of the toml files, in each one of the sub crates. And it's a little bit strange for me because the URL is the same for each one of them, right? So I think the repository link should be able to be taken from the top toml file where you list the sub crates, right? So because now it's easy, it's easy to forget what I'm saying, that you add a new crate inside the workspace and then someone forgets to add the repository because it's not added by default. And that's how it might easily happen that even for a company that has several crates with the repository link and then some without, right? That can easily happen. And it's sort of a little bit boring adding this link to every one of these subcrates when I notice that happens. And I thought about it already, but I haven't done that. I should probably go and see if this could be added to the main toml file and the root of the repository. And if not, then maybe to open an issue on Cargo to allow this, because this is the same information for each one of the crates. So there shouldn't be any reason to replicate it there.
Yeah, I can see how annoying that would be, and you wouldn't want to copy and paste that, right? Some kind of way that you can write it once. That'd make much more sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now. It's annoying. Yeah. So
There must be a way. If not, yeah, I'm also not surprised if there's no way.
this is the point where people start writing some wrappers around Cargo to copy this automatically because they don't have it in the central one, or someone adds this the extra possibility to add to the central toml file.
Let me take a look. You have crates without owner, which is interesting. So you can have a crate without an owner. I don't even know how that even works. Is that's possible?
I don't know. Maybe it's a bug in RustDigger. Okay, so there is the crates without owner name, but the crates without owner that's the most surprising, right? I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, I think I didn't have time to really try to understand what's going on there. I actually opened an issue on crates.io, I think somewhere, asking about the database and some of the fields that I didn't understand, because there's a database dump that I'm using and I wasn't clear about all the fields. I think I haven't received a response yet, but well, time will do the thing. Now, one thing you might have noticed that in each of these lists in the reports, under the reports, these are actually ordered by the update at timestamp, and the newest are the topmost. And well, right now there's only the 100 topmost ones are listed. I didn't add the paging. There is one of the issues that I opened. But sort of my understanding, or the way I think, is that if there is a project that hasn't been updated for 2 years, then it's quite unlikely that if you send a pull request for anything, basically, that that pull request will be accepted, right? But if a project was released just yesterday, let's say, or the more recently a project was last released, the more likely that someone is actually maintaining it and will accept a pull request. That's sort of the reason that the top, that in every one of these reports, it's the most recent is the topmost. And well, if I mean, let's say there is a list of the crates that missing the repository link, if I could just send a pull request for everyone that was released yesterday and fix this slowly, but it will improve a lot. And I do send some, but I mean, the idea is at the end that each owner has their own page listing all their crates. And I think actually there is a bug. So I know that there is a bug because there's some crates that have multiple owners. And I think there is actually a flag in the database saying which is the whatever real owner. I don't know. But I think that I know that the code currently doesn't take that in account. So It just depends on the list of the order of the owners as listed in the database. So maybe it's not the real owner that is listed. But anyway, you can, if you go to the owners menu point, then you will see all the owners that I found in the database. And then you can click one of them. On the right hand side, you can actually see the number of crates they have. And then you can see all the information of all the crates of that person. I just keep talking like giving a presentation, but feel free to ask questions, right?
No, it's okay. I'm learning a lot, and I love how that you can kind of click around and see what's going on. There's obviously some work I think that needs to be done, and I think you'll agree that about some data cleanup. Maybe it's some importing issue or whatever. There's definitely some interesting stuff in here. It's because usually everybody thinks about GitHub, and then maybe GitLab would be, as you can see over here, second for kind of most popular places to host code. You also got Tor project, which seems like it's running on a GitLab instance, is what I believe what this one means, and that makes sense.
Sorry?
Yeah, so Tor project has their own private GitLab. It looks like.
That's why I put that in parentheses.
Yeah, I figured that out. Yeah, but it's still really cool.
Yeah, I guess you're looking at the stats pages.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff in here. It would be nice if you can fix the timestamps to be a little bit more friendly, because I have to kind of think about what date and time this is. There's so many numbers when I look at it. I have to like think about it and parse it out when I look at it, because you have like the milliseconds and everything on there.
Yeah, I wanted to get rid of it. That's one of the issues I have.
Yeah, I mean, if you could also sort by some of these other things, it'd be kind of cool, but not super important. I think already by updated, it's probably okay. In general, like this is already quite a big help. You initially said that you kind of use this to figure out what's like the best practices, right? But you're talking about best practices, not of course to coding, but rather to the TOML file, like adding in repository, adding in these other things, best practices for creating like crates is what you're looking at, right?
Well, right now, yes. There's a column calling FMT. Is just trying to run cargo FMT on each one of the projects and reporting if there is anything to be fixed. And then it's just a recommendation to the author, basically. So that's one. Then I could go in. There are I think 2 files where you can configure the formatting, right? And I was planning on analyzing those files and then giving a report of what kind of formatting options people select that are not the default. And then going on and starting to analyze the code and seeing, I don't know, how many times or which piece of code uses this kind of, when you disable that code analysis or whatever, okay? There are all kind of interesting things that you can analyze inside the Rust code and then create some kind of a map of which features are used the most and where are those features of the language are used and where are those features used in which crate. There is also the option of running the cargo fix on each one of the projects and reporting what's going on there. So even if it's just a report on the website to see which one of the crates could be improved just by running cargo fix.
What else I also see in here too is, right, so I was just taking a look. I see over here Leptos Dev Tools. I think most people have heard of Leptos. We had the creator around here before. If you go there, his repositories link into the HTTP version of GitHub, but obviously if you go there, you're going to get redirected. And I guess it is a link to a repo without HTTPS, but I mean, is it really? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, because it does redirect you, right? Yeah, so it's not foolproof, but it's still pretty interesting to see. And it would be nice to say, hey, why don't you, fix this, etc. Because, I mean, it could be a problem. I don't know.
Sorry, which one?
Oh, if you go to repos with HTTP, and then you'll
Yes.
see the top Leptos Dev Tools. I thought that was kind of interesting.
So normally, or whatever, it's 9, it's 7. It's just yesterday was released. So
Yeah.
maybe after we finish this podcast, then I will just go and send a pull request for all these repos that were released in the last couple of days. As you can see, only the top 3 were released in the last 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Top 4 were released in the last 2 weeks. Probably because the other ones that were released in the middle, I sent a pull request already, and they released a new version with the HTTPS. Right?
Oh, that's nice.
In these ones, I try to send pull requests for the most recent ones, and then some of them. I mean, it's so easy to accept, and some of the people accept, some of them leave it there for whatever reason, and then they don't accept the pull request. Or it's just none of them. No one rejected the pull request of fixing the HTTPS yet, but but some people don't actually. I don't know, have the time for it, or they just didn't touch the crate since that time, maybe.
It also would be interesting if there's a way that we can somehow scan for somebody's. I mean, there's quite a few name squatting. If you've ever heard of that before in Rust, we have quite a few name squatters.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I think, but name squatters would mean that you uploaded a crate with a good name or a useful name, but
Yeah, exactly. And you're just holding on to it for whatever reason. Maybe, some people they may say, okay, I'm gonna actually use this, but I'm not ready to upload my crate yet, but I want to reserve it. And I think that's fair to a certain extent, right?
yeah,
But there's some people that just squat the name for whatever reason and they just don't upload anything ever.
yeah. I don't know how would you recognize that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think people can recognize it because it's only had like one upload and it was like, a long time ago. And if you open up the crate, it's just like hello world, something like that.
My question here actually, so okay, so you can recognize easily that there was a crate that was uploaded and there's not much in it. But the question is whether it's real squatting. Is it a good useful name that other people would want to use, or is just someone who used their own personal name, let's say. When I started to play with this and I uploaded my first crate, it was so easy to do. I mean, compared to all the others that I tried,
Yeah.
other languages. So this is sort of a two-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, it's so nice people can upload, but it means that a lot of people will upload Hello World just to see that they can do it.
Here's one, right? So I just went looking for Google and there's one user. I don't want to put their name out there, but you can easily find their name. Here's some of the names that they're, quote unquote, squatting. Take it for good or bad. It's just, it says algorithm, any, bash, benchmark, BH. I don't know what BH would be. Bind, boost. I guess like the C++ library. Box, car, cast. I don't know what that is. But
Okay.
the interesting thing is the description says WIP, basically work in progress. Contact me if you want to use this name. Now, are they squatting the name so that no everybody squats it, or are they just squatting the name? Just I don't know, and then put that there to say, hey, look at me. I'm just squatting it. But if you want to use it, let me know. You know what I mean? Like trying to cover themselves. I don't know. It's quite interesting, but I think that would be interesting to see all the names that are being squatted on.
Okay, so let's define it and add that issue.
It's a great measurement, right? But I mean, it's not super important, but it's enough that I think recently there's been like recently. I mean, it's about a year or so ago. I think there was quite a few people complaining about this issue in Crates.io.
Hmm.
And then I'm not too sure if we have a way to see like kind of somewhat popular crates that are kind of that haven't been updated in a while, because like you said, you don't have the repository for it, like, but you'd like to be able to, keep track of them so that way if somebody ever stops working on it, that you can keep up to date with that. I mean, maybe it's too much, but I'm just thinking some things out of my mind that would be interesting to see.
So there's something else actually that I don't see happening now. Looking at crates.io, I just recently heard a presentation about some interesting thing that you can do on PyPI. So the Python, the same thing for Python, is that you can upload Python module, library, whatever you call it, and in there you refer as the repository to a well-known repository. And then in PyPI, what they will do is they will fetch the number of stars from that repository that you linked to. So you uploaded a new module, and suddenly it already has like 500 stars because you are linking to a different repository. And what people were using this for attacking other people's computer because they uploaded modules
I see.
with similar names. The web page on PyPI, so the same thing as crates.io, you looked at it, you saw that it has, I don't know, tons of stars, and I don't know how long it has been maintained because this information is taken from the repository, and then you install it, the thing with the typo, let's say. So that was a attack vector on Python apparently. I don't now looking at crates.io, I don't see this information I don't see any information taken from the repository, but maybe there is, and at what point there might be. I mean, as crates.io it changes and improves, and I don't know. Let's say for if you in the lips RS, if there is some similar information, maybe there is. And then one of the things that I was thinking. So right now, when I'm analyzing or I try to analyze code, I assume that the repository link is to the correct repository. But one of the things I plan to do is to download the crate from crates.io and try to compare the source code with the one that's in the repository to see if it's how different they are. Is this the repository really of that project? So there's another thing that, for example, again, I think on the Perl website, on the Perl-related website I added recently, is that you look at the crate, and then you can see on the very same page the list of all the dependencies and all the information about these dependencies. So let's say you're using some crate, and then it has like 100 dependencies, not just the immediate ones, but all the way down. Okay, so the recursive dependencies, and you would like to find out which one might have a license that it's not the same, it's not appropriate for you, or find out which crates are the problematic ones. Maybe there's 100 crates that are there, and 3 that haven't been maintained for 3 years. So how do you find that when you rely on some crate? And that's sort of part of what the plan.
It'd be interesting to see what is like the most dependent upon crates. What is their state? Like how
Yes,
well are they maintained? These kind of stuff.
exactly.
So similar to what
Yeah,
your thought process.
yeah. It's the sort of the other direction of the same report. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of I think you were hinting at this before, but some kind of malware, right? There
Yeah.
was actually some malware caught on Crates.io somewhat recently. This was back in end of August. There was
Mhm.
postmortem about this. And so there was a crate called Postgres with 2 S's at the end, so just
Mm.
one.
Okay.
And it was caught by a company that was scanning around, and they were kind of watching what was happening. Basically, they just put a string in a main function and uploaded it.
Hmm.
Nothing happened after a couple days or after some time. Then they started adding more stuff to it over time.
Mm.
And eventually, what happened was it wanted people to download it. And then as soon as you run it, it's going to try to get information about your computer and then send it to a Telegram bot. But I mean, this would also be interesting too, is to see similarly named crates, right? And it would give
Okay.
an idea, are they malware? Or are they just names
Yeah.
that are just similar? Like, I think
Yes.
request is probably already taken. And then we have our famous request, which is spelled a little bit differently. If you
Hmm.
can link those two together, it'd be interesting to see, is it malware or is it actually a real bona fide crate?
That's a much bigger problem than I think, much more complex problem than the ones that I am addressing now.
Yeah, definitely. But it would just be interesting to see the similar named crates.
I guess already if I can provide a list of all the crates that are, let's say, 1 letter distance from each crate. So a mapping of the crates of the distance, and then okay, it's sort of a warning, and then as a first step, someone can manually look at it. Okay, that's that much better than trying to look at all the how many 100,000 crates that you have there.
Yeah, I agree. That would be really cool. You were kind of already talking about a couple of things that you're working on right now, and then things that you're thinking about adding in. Is there any immediate work that you're planning to put in, like within next couple of weeks, next couple of months, that for sure is going to happen?
I have some memory leak that I have to figure out. I'm just copying the list of all the crates several times, and it blows up. So that I will have to fix soon. I'm working right now on the cloning of repositories. I used to have something, but now I need to improve it. And then I'm planning to run Clippy on them, on all the repositories, and then report that as well. So these are sort of the immediate things that I'm working on regarding this site. And yeah, I think these are the main things. The whole project is in GitHub, and there are a few issues opened already. Mostly I opened them, but I would be really happy to have more people look at the site, tell me. Even if they just open issues of what's not working properly or what kind of features they might think that could be useful on the website. That would be definitely giving me a boost of interest in implementing things. And obviously, I would be happy to get people looking at my code. It's very far from being good Rust code at this point, but slowly it's going to improve.
Well, that was gonna be my follow-up question is if you're looking for any help and, where they could see that, but like you said, you have a GitHub, you have issues on there. Basically, people can start to contribute, new issues, so basically new ideas, bugs, whatever, and also contribute actual code besides just contribute, the issues themselves, right?
Yeah, and of course, I mean, I would be really happy if people started to use the website in order to fix issues in all kind of these small issues, basically, right? At this point, in all of the crates. What I do now is sort of a sneaky marketing strategy of the website is that every time I send a pull request, once it's accepted, then I comment on the pull request, linking to the web page where all the crates of the person is listed, so they can look at the website. And some people quite liked the idea, and they thought that it will be useful for them. I mean, right now the whole thing is a static website, so it's analyzing and creates a static website. And I don't think that I plan to create a dynamic one, at least not on the back end at this point. But there could be more, I guess, JavaScript part that let's say makes adding search to the website, so you will be able to easily find the crate you're looking for. I mean, right now the owners is just a whole long list of all the owners, which is, I guess, quite a big page. Um, but it's probably not a big issue for most people with fast internet connection. But it's still an issue. I mean, it would be still nicer probably to be able just to search for a username or for a crate, even if the whole thing is client side search, so that everything would be JavaScript. Yeah, I think that these are the main issues that I'm trying to fix now.
Awesome. I mean, and with that, I mean, I think people should come check it out. We didn't actually mention the name of the website at all, which I think would be useful to at least say. And then, of course, I can put it into the show notes. Not just the name, but the URL, right?
If people look for Rust Digger, I hope that they can already find it on one of search engines. But it's Rust-Digger dot and then code dash Maven. Now that's a whole separate story. Why is that? And .com. Because the whole Code Maven website is where I write about all kind of technical stuff, and people think that it has anything to do with Maven, with the Java Maven, but it's just a word. It's just using the same word.
That was my first thought.
No, no. The whole story is that when I wanted to come up with a name, I heard this word Maven, and I was so. I mean, I knew about Java Maven at that point, but I didn't even think about it. I was so
Okay.
removed from that world that only a couple of years later, some people started to complain, but why is this site not talking about Java Maven? And I said, there's nothing to do, it's just a word.
This is marketing, You get people in from other places. It's marketing.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah. The confusion is not that good for marketing, I think, but yeah. Yeah. So it's rust-digger.code-maven.com.
All right. Well, definitely put it in the show notes because it is a little bit long. I think this is really cool, and I hope that people can get some use out of it. But I think first recommend check it out, see what you think. It could be a good tool, and then if you have ideas, contribute either with issues or even with code. Right? I think you have no objections about that.
No, definitely. I would be really happy. Just be please nice to me. No, don't say this horrible Rust code. I know. Just try to help improving it. Okay?
Well, a good improvement is to fix You said you have a memory issue, right?
Yeah.
Could be a good first pull request for somebody with some experience with large, sounds like with strings. I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, again, thank you for coming on. No, it's definitely a pleasure on my side.
Thank you very much for having me.